Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the first episode of our new season of The Financial Confessions. It's me, Chelsea Fagan, your host, founder and CEO of The Financial Diet, and woman who loves talking about money. And to say that I am excited for our first guest of the season would be an understatement. She is someone that not just myself, but everyone in our office is very familiar with. She has been the subject of many conversations in the office right behind me over the past couple years for not only her time on television, but also just all of the amazing things that she has managed to do with that level of exposure. We've had former reality show participants on the show before, and much of what we've talked about in those cases is how often the tool and the access that having such a large audience can provide to someone is something that the participants are either not ready for, don't fully understand, or just simply don't make the best use of. But my guest today is someone who came onto reality television with a very strong sense of self professionally and, as we'll discuss, athletically, and managed to use her time to build what is, in my opinion, a rather extraordinary business. I'm also someone who you may know if you're a longtime viewer of the channel, especially during the pandemic. I've kind of low-key fallen off a bit. We don't need to get into that, but used to do Pilates quite intensively. So I'm very excited to speak to her about that aspect of what she does as well as all of the ins and outs of both being on and making the most of reality television. I put out a call to questions on my personal Instagram account this morning, and in just a few hours have literally hundreds of questions already. So I won't be able to get to them all, but I will try and get as many as possible and pick the brain of this truly incredible woman that I have on my show today, Miss Raven Ross, who you may know from Love is Blind. Hi, Raven.
Hi. Oh my gosh, that was the sweetest intro ever. Wow.
I'd like to thank Nutrafol for supporting TFC. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support TFC by going to Nutrafol.com and entering the promo code TFC to save $10 off your first month subscription plus free shipping on every order. And thanks to ZocDoc for supporting TFC. ZocDoc is the only free app that lets you find and book doctors who take your insurance and are available when you need them. Go to ZocDoc.com/TFC and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. I have to say, we were all so excited to have you on the show because as I mentioned in the intro, like it is very rare to see someone come out of reality television with such a strong, like you were obviously promoting the fact that you are a Pilates instructor, and that is, your business as well as obviously a huge part of who you are. And it was really integrated very seamlessly into your appearance on the show in a way that it feels natural that like even your handle on social media is like Pilates Body Raven. And frankly, as a businesswoman, I just massively respect the hustle.
Thank you. Yeah, a lot of things I'll say, just happened. And I got pretty lucky and I'm a super hard worker, so it all kind of just came together. But yeah, like I never would have thought like, my handle would have like really solidified like my business and make people know like, oh, like that's the girl that does Pilates. So yeah, like you said, it's a lot of small things that all came together at the right place and the right time.
Now, I have to start by just asking because obviously, so we've had contestants from the Bachelor Bachelorette franchise on before for whom there is like a very, very serious sort of mandate of like you have to be here for the right reasons. Like you should not even care that you're on a television show. You should just be explicitly trying to find love. But obviously, anyone with like even a modicum of common sense would be like, okay, but they're obviously going on this massive platform. They're going to develop this huge audience. And there has to be some level of intentionality to that. Because if you're going to take kind of the risks that come with it, as well as, the potential negatives, you want to be able to make kind of the most out of it. So for you going into a show as big as Love is Blind, what was your thinking going into it in terms of this is how I want to make sure that I'm getting out of this experience professionally and in terms of my public profile, what I want to be?
That's a really good question. Yeah, I think you're right, especially nowadays that like reality TV has super, super evolved and with social media. Anyone with a little bit of common sense knows that you're going to have a much bigger platform once leaving the show, right? I think for me personally, I was more like nervous and hesitant, just about like putting my personal life on television, like putting my like, like how I was gonna come off, how things that I was gonna say. I'd never been in front of a camera like that ever before, basically 24 hours a day. So it's kind of hard to like make sure you're doing the right thing at all times. And I definitely did not do that. But as far as like setting myself up or kind of like anticipating, um I think I actually probably could have done a better job, to be quite honest. Before the show I was never a huge social media person. It took me forever to get on TikTok. On my page, even though I was Pilates body raven long before the show, I rarely posted about Pilates. It was just, like a typical girl Instagram. I almost never posted, to be honest. So I think I could have definitely done a better job there. But what kind of gave me a little nudge actually was I just really was unhappy at my job at the time before the show and during the show and even after. We filmed like about a year or even like almost a year and a half before it came out. So I was basically really unhappy in my job and I felt like I wanted to A, be able to exercise more, B, be able to reach more people like with my passion, which is Pilates, and thirdly, to kind of break some typical Pilates stereotypes. I worked in a studio for years and I felt like I wasn't reaching the demographic that I wanted to reach. So that all led me to be like, you know what? Like I have free time outside of work. Like I'm just gonna make this YouTube. Like I'm just gonna literally figure it out. And I did that, and it was really, really hard. And so I basically started that about a year before the show ended up airing, or maybe, yeah, about a year before the show ended up airing. And I think that definitely gave me a little bit more drive and gave people more of a reason to stick with me.
We're obviously not going to get into any kind of details about it, but you obviously went through some serious heartbreak with your partner on the show that created a really high level of interest in you and your story after the fact. And, it's kind of an interesting parallel, but, for my reality TV girlies out there, who I assume is going to be a lot of you watching, obviously Ariana on Vanderpump Rules has been going through kind of a similar situation where it has really kind of raised her profile to an extent, having been jilted by, in her case, her long-term partner, Tom Sandoval, in a way that's opened up and created a lot of opportunities for her that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been the case. And I watched your interview with, I want to say it's Nick Vial, I'm not sure. One of the podcast hosts, you did a very deep dive interview onto your whole experience. I would be really interested to hear how you balance the interest that people have in what is obviously such an upsetting moment for you and ultimately such a personal part of your life, how you balance that interest and even in some cases the opportunities it can create from that interest with really kind of protecting yourself and not feeling like you're exploiting your own heartache for other people's consumption.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think, in the midst of everything happening, I had a lot of people around me that gave me good direction. And basically, I decided to be pretty private about it. I only did that one podcast, and that was a few months after the fact. But in the midst of everything, I did my best to just kind of process myself, um, because it's hard when the whole world, you feel like the whole world is weighing in on something that is like so significant in your life and really heartbreaking. But I think that immense pain and a huge life lesson definitely in the long run created more opportunities for me, and especially made other women identify with me more and want to connect more. So I don't think necessarily I too much exploited that connection. I think if anything, I kind of used it to um, serve as a lesson for others and inspire others who are in the same situation to, you know, do their best to protect their mental and physical health. Uh, so pretty much after it happened, a few months down the line, quite a bit of time later, I ended up creating my second Pilates challenge, which we called Revenge Body. So like that kind of was my like little stake at that, right? That was kind of like, I'm not gonna deep dive into everything that happened, but like I want to show you guys and share with you guys what I've taken from my experience and what helped me do my best to come out of it, which was doing hard work and exercising and building community. So
I would love to hear more generally your thoughts on going from being, as you said, not just anonymous to a large extent, but also not even really a user of social media, to feeling like having an online persona is so integral to the success of, for example, your Pilates business. And like, obviously, it's not what you're offering when people, take classes with you or are trained by you, but it is a really, really powerful marketing tool. Can you talk a little bit about your experience of how you balance creating this public persona and brand with still keeping the focus on what it is that you actually do, which is being a master trainer of Pilates?
ooh, that's a very hard it's hard. Um, especially like you mentioned before, going from being a non-user to, having to come out of your shell and put stuff on the internet to help build your brand, build, your personality. I think a little bit for me, I still struggle and people still comment that, people are like, "Oh my gosh, like I didn't know like you were actually funny or had a personality. Like we didn't see any of that on the show." Like, and then they see my social media and they're like, "Wow, we didn't know you were like this." So I think pushing myself to just be comfortable on social media um was a big step for me. But I think what really got me there was that people didn't identify with me at first. And like I got a lot of backlash, especially in the beginning when the show first came out, which was understandable. I mean, like I was cringing at myself. Um, but that gave me like super thick skin. And I won't say super thick, right? Because I'm still really sensitive, but it gave me much thicker skin and just made me comfortable to just be like, people already don't like me. So anything I'm going to put on the internet, like it can't get any worse than this. I may as well just laugh about it. And I think making that transition made me a lot more comfortable on social media and make people actually like me a lot more. Um, and in turn, I think actually doing that, sorry, my cat is on my lap.
It's
Um,
perfect.
I think in turn, like being that funny person and like just really being myself, really worked for me. But now that you know, I'm not on TV anymore and I'm just relying on myself to like, reach more people. I'm definitely trying to find the balance between like how much personality do I show versus how much like can I talk to y'all about what I'm here for, which like is my purpose is, inspiring other people to put their health and wellness first. So a little bit I go back and forth like, oh, I don't want to be too salesy, people are here because they want to know about my personal life. So what you're saying is yeah, it's definitely two-sided and I really have to balance those things.
Well, I mean, speaking of seeing yourself on television, something I'm always really fascinated by with people who've been on television in any capacity, or really anyone who's been in the public eye to that extent, not just in general, but for you, there's obviously a layer on top of it because you're an athletic instructor. Like you have this expectation of being in perfect shape all the time to be sort of an aspirational image of what people would necessarily like would be wanting if they were to work with you, and to lend credibility, I suppose, in some sense to the work that you do. I'm curious how seeing yourself in that way has changed, or if it has changed, your relationship with your body and your physical appearance, and how you deal with the pressure, not just of looking gorgeous on TV, but also looking like an ideal Pilates body 24/7.
That is a great question. I think, ooh, to be honest, because I started from the bottom, like, I felt like no one liked me. I was, I was just was like, I'm going to take a risk and just put myself out there because I had a lot of walls up on the show and people saw that and like I want to start taking those walls down, right? So I think that helped me to kind of get over like, oh, my body needs to look perfect, XYZ. And I think that a lot more people can identify with that. Um, you know, I think it was natural for me to kind of veer that way because a lot of the other creators that I admire or just people in general are more like about inclusivity, diversity. So surprisingly, I haven't had too much more like body dysmorphia than I already have. But I think, yeah, in general, there's a pressure to look perfect. Seeing yourself on TV is like the most cringe thing you could possibly do. Like the worst lighting, the worst angle, just the worst everything. So again, I'm like, you know what? All these people already saw me at my worst. Like the other day I even said on TikTok, like, I can't believe like I'm a creator who's on here like literally with no makeup on and like wet hair, like, but I'm like, I don't know, So thankfully it hasn't affected me too much, but that's not to say that's not going to change. I mean, definitely I see on Instagram, like it's very aesthetic driven and I, you know, that's not something I super want to be a part of.
Very understandable. Well, speaking of Instagram, so as I mentioned, I put up a call for questions like a couple hours ago and I have hundreds. So I'm just going to ask a few questions from my audience.
Okay.
Okay. You don't have to answer this, but I would be curious if you're willing to. Do you think that the majority of the people, of your co stars, were actually looking for or ready for marriage when they went on the show?
Ooh, the majority, no.
Nice.
And it could be some of them weren't ready and some of them weren't looking for, but yeah, some definitely were and most weren't.
Can you talk a little bit about the financials of taking all of that time off of work to be on TV?
You do have to take a little bit of time off of work, but we did get a little bit of compensation, just enough to like kind of cover your rent.
Right.
So, people it's a trade-off, it's a choice and it's a risk. You rather lose a little money and end up in love slash married or, um, but it's definitely a trade-off and for sure.
Well, on that note, similarly, what investments did you make, if any, in your appearance before you went on the show?
Ooh, investments in my appearance. regular hair, nails. We were there for a few weeks, so it's like you can't get a spray tan because that you will be not tan by the end. um, but yeah, to be honest, I'm not like a fashion girly. So like I know a lot of people like bought whole new wardrobes, like redecorated their apartments in case like, we shot in there. I did not do those things. But that's not to say like things weren't expensive because they definitely were. But again, it's a trade-off. But I didn't do as much as most people did.
That's interesting. That is crazy to like create a whole new wardrobe in your house in case they shoot there. Like what an extra investment. Okay. Since having a relationship that was basically as public as a relationship can be, what boundaries have you created around sharing your new relationship?
Oh yeah. Woo, a lot. And I think it's for the better, I've created a lot of boundaries around sharing my new relationship. Um, I feel like, at least for me, social media was a big part of um my past relationship. Like, you know, um, so that's definitely it was a big learning experience and definitely something I've carried into my next relationship and as well as like a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, like it's okay um to share what you want to share. And luckily I have an audience that's super understanding about it.
It's nice. I am looking to become a new Pilates teacher. What are some important ways that I should financially prepare?
Ooh, yeah. Save some money so you can get some one-on-one time with a mentor or your trainer. That really helped me. I would also ask the program or the studio that you're going to do it at if they have any kind of work trade or any scholarship opportunities. That's becoming more of a thing nowadays. Um, and get as many free resources as you can. YouTube is a great place and it's free.
It's true. I was really into it during the pandemic. That was like when it was at its peak because I did it before, and then during the pandemic, well, I had nothing else to do, so I was like doing Zoom groups, and that was actually really good. I also totally agree. I will say, I've said this before, Pilates in particular, I think is an exercise that like if you go into a class, even a beginner class, like totally not knowing what you're doing, you may not stick with it. I highly recommend people, if they're looking to take the classes, invest in a few one-on-one sessions before, just so they like understand how to move their body and like what the terms mean, because yeah, it's a little bit not something you can totally jump into. You can, but it like you have to be really brave to jump into it from zero.
Especially in a studio.
Yes, especially because, like, I don't know, I'm sure that your approach is a lot more approachable, but I will say I've been to probably like 50 different studios because I would always go to different ones while I was traveling for work. And like a lot of Pilates studios are very busy and like not very welcoming and very like the vibes are off in a lot of Pilates studios.
Literally, the vibes are so off. And that's what made me like want to start my YouTube because I'm like, just to be like frank, like I'm sick of being like, first of all, a lot of times the only young person, the only person of color, like there's just the vibe is off. It's 2023. Like, we can play music, we can like live a little. Like Joseph Pilates is not gonna come back and haunt us for it. Like, so I kind of just wanted to like open that door. I'm a classically trained instructor, but that doesn't mean you have to like be rigid. And I don't know. So exactly, I agree. And that's why I started my YouTube, just to try to reach more people who were having that experience too.
We're excited to once again be partnering with Nutrafol here on the Financial Confessions. We actually talk about Nutrafol a lot around the office since our marketing director, Rachel, started using it earlier this year. To be totally honest, hair growth is not something that personally affects me, so I'm happy that we found a product that has had a positive impact for someone else on our team. We all know men experience hair loss, but many women do too, even though it's not as openly spoken about. But here at TFD, we tend to speak pretty openly with each other, and Rachel has openly spoken a lot about dealing with postpartum hair loss, as well as general changes in her hair texture and thickness since giving birth. birth. After all of her other postpartum symptoms subsided, it's the one that has remained the longest. She's changed up the products she uses and stopped applying heat like hair dryers and curling irons completely, but nothing has made a real impact. She started taking 4 Nutrafol capsules every morning with breakfast and says she can already see a difference in the amount of hair she's shedding. We love that for her. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting the 5 root causes of thinning: stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, and metabolism through whole body health. And in a clinical study, 86% of women reported improved hair growth after 6 months. You can grow thicker, healthier hair and support our show by going to Nutrafol.com and entering the promo code TFC to save $10 off your first month subscription. This offer is only available to U.S. customers for a limited time, plus free shipping on every order. Get $10 off at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code TFC. I want to take a quick pause and thank today's sponsor, ZocDoc. If there's one thing you should actually take the time to do, it's find yourself a good doctor, whether it's for your mental health, your yearly checkup, or a new dentist because you're still going to the same one from your childhood and realize you don't actually like them. Finding the right doctor should not be an overwhelming task. It should actually be the opposite. ZocDoc is the only free app that lets you find and book doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, are available when you need them, and treat almost every condition under the sun. Instead of going to TikTok for medical advice, no shade because you know I love TikTok, it's just not where I nor you should be seeking out medical advice, I use ZocDoc, literally, I personally do use it, to find the right medical professionals, and you should too. Like I said, I actually use ZocDoc, and honestly, it has been really, really helpful to just keep that entire part of my life totally organized, as it's something that can easily feel overwhelming and become an item on your to-do list that just kind of lingers there forever and gives you anxiety. ZocDoc is honestly the GOAT. And if for whatever reason you're not feeling your best, finding the right care shouldn't take up all your time and energy. That's where ZocDoc comes in to help. Using their free app that millions of users rely on, you can find the right doctor that meets your needs and fits your busy schedule. Here in New York City, some doctors are booked up for weeks, if not months in advance, and that's not particularly helpful when you have something that needs timely attention. With ZocDoc, you can book an appointment with a few taps in their app and choose from thousands of patient-reviewed doctors and specialists, browse doctor profiles, upload and verify your insurance information, and get the care you need in one place. Go to ZocDoc.com/TFC and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then book a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/TFC. ZocDoc.com/TFC. Okay. What is one non-negotiable that you spend on to take care of yourself no matter the cost?
Ooh. Therapy.
Nice.
I've had the same therapist for a while, and I don't even do it through insurance anymore. So it's a pretty penny.
Shout out to therapy. Out of curiosity, were you with this therapist before you went on TV?
So I was with him after we filmed, because I was like, going through it. But yeah, that was like way before I was actually on TV. So yes and no. I worked with him right after we filmed, but we were working together for almost a year until it came out.
Oh, yeah. Because that's got to be so weird, like having this all filmed and then having a year before any of it's released. That's crazy.
I know, it is pretty crazy.
Okay. We have about 50 people saying some version of drop the hair routine.
Really?
People love your hair.
Oh my gosh. Well, it has been such a journey. That was like actually one of the mortifying things when you're talking about like appearance on TV. Like, I really was like living for my blonde hair. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is a look. And then at the second I saw it on TV, I was dead. Like, oh my gosh. Like I even like texted my best friends in my group chat, like, y'all, like, how did y'all let me do that? But yeah, my hair routine has definitely evolved, but I've been posting a lot about it on Instagram and TikTok. So stay tuned there.
Okay. Do you see high quality workout clothing as a good investment?
Ooh. Honestly, yes. And I will say, like, for instance, I have high quality pieces I have a few pairs of leggings from high school that was like 10 years or probably longer than that. Definitely longer than 10 years ago, that like are still cool, they're still definitely hanging in there. So Um, I do think it's a good investment. Am I definitely guilty of like buying cute Amazon sets? Yes, 100%. Hell yeah.
I think we all are, unfortunately. um, this is a question I guess. Do you talk about astrology?
Sometimes.
Okay, because we have a few astrology questions, including someone who says, "How does being an Aries inform your spending habits?"
Ooh. um, I am a very responsible spender. Even my boyfriend now is like, "You are so cheap." Like, I really am cheap, but there's definitely an air of impulsivity. I think that's a word, I don't know, for Aries. So, like, when I really like something or I get an idea, I wanna do it, like, yeah, I'm gonna spend the money on it. But I'm responsible, so, like, the money is there.
Honestly, that's an aspirational balance because a lot of times people are one extreme or the other. Okay. How has being on television changed your career and business opportunities specifically, and are you glad you did it for those reasons?
I mean, I didn't really have my own business, before. Like I said, like, I was desperate. I was not in a good place with my work and just started doing my YouTube just to kind of give myself an outlet. And that prompted me to like, do my LLC, stuff like that. So then I was just already set up and already had some like familiarity. So yeah, I, you know, have had incredible business opportunities since. Um, all of that to say, now I don't have to work for anyone else, and it's great.
Truth. Okay. On that note, though, have your views or approach to money changed since being on reality television?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely a lot of my views around money have changed, um, and then some haven't. I guess number one, I got a lot of heat when I was on the show for, bringing up like what is the role between paying bills between husband and wife, XYZ. And I definitely did not, the whole conversation was not on there. So people definitely took it a certain way. Um, but I will say, since then, and since becoming an earner myself, I do not feel the same way. Like, I don't feel like, my husband has to pay all the bills. It has to be this way. Like, to be honest, as a woman, there's really nothing better than financial freedom as a woman because when you don't have it and you get it, it changes things.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, yeah, to be honest, like that conversation that you had on the show that had such a high expectation of the man being the provider. It's such an interesting topic for me and for what we do because, well, first of all, as you put it, I mean, I assume that that was edited to all hell, so who knows what you actually said, but I do think that that's a really interesting question because on the one hand, like, yes, I think in general, like gender parity is a great ideal, but in reality, like in most marriages, like women earn less. They take a much bigger hit for like, especially if they have children. Like women,
Yep.
it's much more difficult for women to reach the level of financial independence that men are able to reach long term. And I do feel like and it's also very true that like women in general are expected to take on most of the domestic labor and to like run the household and to do all of these things that are were expectations 50 years ago, except 50 years ago they were also like the man was paying for everything. So I do feel like I always get sensitive when people are too critical of that approach because it's like the alternative is what a lot of women have, where they have all of the responsibility at home and they have all the responsibility financially. And it's just like a totally lose lose situation. And like, obviously, you were able to get to a place of true financial independence, but your case is like pretty rare. Like, that's not accessible for a lot of women.
Agreed, 100%. And that's exactly what I was trying to say on the show. Like, I'm never gonna be able to, even if I had the same job as you, to make the same amount of money as you. On top of, I want like, I like a more gender role normative relationship. I like to come home and like, make a home for me and my partner. Like that is something I look forward to, but I can't do that and have those responsibilities on top of like having a very demanding full-time job. Um, on top of like being a normal person and being healthy. Like it's too much responsibility. And I think a lot of women struggle with that. So I'm like, if you're already making more money than me and like doing better, like, and I'm still a hard worker and, I'm never going to stop working. And that was a lot of the conversation too. I'm like, no, like you should be paid. But my views have definitely changed now. And I think they're after having more financial freedom, there is more leeway, I guess I wouldn't like exclude so many people out. It's not as high on my priority list, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Well, because again, also because you're in a position to make that choice. Okay. Oh, this is funny. Have you ever regretted spending money on a boyfriend, and if so, why?
Ooh, to be honest, this is another way that I've changed. But oh my gosh, in the past, I'd be like, I'm not spending money on no man. but like definitely, just to be completely honest, do I feel that way now? Absolutely not. Like, but also I'm in my current relationship now is just like so healthy and great. And so like I do like spare no expense with that. But to be honest, I don't have a lot of experience in that department because yeah, absolutely not.
A lot of people are asking if you watch the show.
My season, I guess yeah, it's a no. I watched season 1 and 2. I watched bits and pieces of my own season and I've watched bits and pieces of season 4 so far.
That's really, I mean, you've sort of like spoken to it, but like, I feel like the experience of watching yourself, not just on television, but in that context on television, seems so unpleasant.
Oh my gosh, like so I remember I like just grazed through it in the beginning. But then one day I like tried to like go back and like actually watch and oh my gosh, I had like such a panic attack. Like I ended up meeting with my therapist and I'm like, I'm horrible.
Oh.
Like literally, like I watched myself and I was like, I can't believe I'm like that. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so negative. Like just like was so hard on myself. I got like 2 episodes in and I've never watched it since.
That's totally understandable. Although, if I may, I actually think that you probably have had the best arc that a person can have on reality television, because I actually think people who are just really great, like really beloved throughout, it's like sort of, it's a little forgettable, to be honest. Like sometimes, yes, they can really stick out, but I think like, because I remember when we were talking about it in the office while the season was airing, like there was like a very distinct like bell curve of people being like, Raven is the worst. And then it was like, wait, is Raven actually good? And then it was like, Raven's our favorite,
Oh,
which is, I think to me anyway, like as a viewer and as someone who, you know, ultimately to some extent understands what it's like to have a public facing like profile, like I think that in many ways that's the most accurate reflection of how anyone would be if they went onto a show like that, because you're first of all extremely uncomfortable, I would imagine at first, but also like no one's ever going to be over the course of several weeks in such a high stress situation like the absolute most perfect curated version of themselves. And it's kind of for the best to show up front like, yeah, this is as bad as it gets, it's all up from here.
literally, exactly. This is as bad as it gets. I was very uncomfortable. And there was even like times when we would all agree, like, I don't even think like I'm being myself right now. Like, this is like another version of me. And I'm like sitting here trying to fall in love. And like, I literally feel crazy right now. So yeah, I mean, seeing myself on TV is definitely wild.
Yeah. Well, okay. So on that note, did you feel a lot of people asking, did you feel pressure to wear a different outfit every day?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
That's really
But
expensive,
looking back on it, that's really stupid and you shouldn't do that.
right? Because they like, wouldn't they just like edit it all out of order anyway?
Yeah, things are so chopped up. I mean, there's tons of outfits that we all wore that were never even shown, because they can't show every single thing. So it's not a great philosophy. And like I said, like I definitely am not a fashion girly. So like I didn't care as much as other people did. But yeah, you feel that pressure, but it doesn't really matter. They chop things up anyway. No one will know.
Okay. What is one thing that you wish that you had known before becoming a public figure?
I guess I already knew this, but I didn't practice it. Don't go looking for information and don't read the comments.
That's a really good one. So as a last question, we have so many people asking some version of like, tell us about your business right now. And if someone wanted to do something similar to what you're doing, how should they go about it?
Ooh, okay, yeah. So my business definitely has a few different components. I like I said, have my YouTube um that I really focus on. And then I offer free workouts, but then I also partner with an app where I have some like affordable paid content in the form of like challenges. So I have those two things that I offer like as my products, right? Um, we're developing some small merch items. We've started doing some really fun pop-up classes in different cities. Um, and then on the other side of that, of course, being on TV, you get, you know, paid brand deals. Um, so that's another component of my business outside of Pilates. And that's on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. So I'd say getting more specific, if you were someone in my case who is interested in becoming a Pilates instructor or a new instructor, I'd say, get experience in a studio because that's where I learned how to work with all people in all kinds of bodies. And that experience is really valuable. But on the other side of the coin, typically Pilates studios take over 50% of, what you're doing. So you need to be doing something else that's going to supplement them taking that money. So I recommend like everyone, YouTube is a very slow burn, but it's good for building a small, really trusted community. Maybe if you already know people, you could start on something like even like a paid YouTube subscription, or I know people do Patreon, or maybe even like making a PDF, but coming up with something that's like affordable and attainable and won't be a lot of investment for you up front, I feel like is the best advice I could give any kind of person who's in my field. I hate to like be apocalyptic, but like, studios, everyone's always like, are you going to open a studio? Are you going to open a studio? And to me, I'm like, okay, first of all, COVID, that closed a lot of things down, especially in the Pilates and fitness world. And I think people nowadays, it's quicker to just do something at home. So I feel like it's a lot lower lift and it's something like you can start anytime. So that's kind of my take on it if, someone was in my shoes.
I totally agree. I like rip my main studio closed during COVID, and I don't think it'll ever open back up. But I totally agree that like accessibility is so key because I feel like Pilates has this very intimidating aura for people. But in my experience, like half of every class I took was like women over the age of like 65 who were like, I mean, shredded, of course. They were like very, very active. But like, it's actually to me, like over the course of a lifetime, it's one of the most accessible exercises because it's so gentle on the body.
Literally, like all of my private clients that I still see sometimes, or a lot of just the demographic, they are a lot of like older, super active, shredded older ladies. And I love that. And that's like one of the main things I try to stress to people who are thinking about starting and like taking Pilates classes. Like, this is something that even if you don't appreciate it now, trying it and keeping it in your back pocket, in your toolbox, because in 30 years, you're not going to be able to, maybe, knock on wood, I hope you'll be able to run a 5K, but there's a high possibility, you won't be able to do all this crazy CrossFit stuff like that. So I think Pilates is an investment really in longevity and your future self. And I just feel like it's so easy. And what I'm trying to do specifically is so accessible and attainable. Like, it's something you can always come back to and have, especially when, you're older.
I totally agree. This has inspired me. I'm going to go sign up for a few more on my little app. I'm going to get back into it. But thank you so much, Raven. This has been such a delightful conversation. And as I said in the intro, I'm really blown away by all that you've been able to create with your, unexpected but delightful celebrity.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. This was fun. I never get to talk about this stuff. So
Good. Well, thank you for joining, and thank you all at home for tuning in. I will see you next week, next Monday to be specific, on an all new episode of The Financial Confessions. Bye, guys.